7 grenades. Aner deflected 7 grenades.
Just sacrificing his life in order to save people whom he didn't even know.
There's this guy, Aner Shapira, who took charge here. It's thanks to him that we're still alive.
And when there is heroism, when there is death, we should think about the creativity that was lost, the life that was lost.
When Aner was in elementary school, he suddenly decided to grow out his side locks, his peyot. He let them grow long, way below his ears. He was the only one in his class with peyot. Everyone made fun of him, of those peyot of his. So I said to him, Aner, are you sure that this is the right thing for you? You know, everyone's making fun of them and all that. You really don't have to keep them. And he said to me, what are you talking about, Mom? So what if they're making fun of me? Let them laugh. And now, when I look through the photo albums, I see him smiling there, a 10-year-old boy with over-the-top blonde peyot, a kid who is saying to the whole world, including his parents, there's nothing you can do. I'm my own boss. That's how he was. He was his own boss, his own commander, his whole life. More than anything else, he couldn't stand injustice. He really couldn't stand it. If he saw a wrong taking place in front of him, he was simply incapable of keeping quiet. As early as elementary school, if someone would taunt someone else by calling them a homo or something like that, he'd pounce at them, that is an insult, don't talk like that. And if, let's say, kids would bully someone in his class, he would go up to them and say, whoever messes with him is also going to have to mess with me. That kind of thing happened all the time. When he was in high school, for example, they'd go out on Thursday nights to hang out in Machne Yehuda market in Jerusalem, and a lot of times he'd see the police cracking down on Ethiopians or Sudanese or foreign workers. Whenever that happened, he'd go up to the policeman and ask, how come you're picking on those guys? He'd say it straight out, but why specifically him? Is it because he's black? What did he do to you? And he didn't care that they were policemen. He didn't care that it might get him into trouble. That didn't matter to him. He was a real warrior for justice and equality. That was what occupied him his whole life. Whenever he encountered discrimination, racism, or homophobia, or any kind of injustice or injury in the week, he would fight it. Hello to everyone, and thank you for watching us. I'm here with Professor Yemima Ben Menachem, who is the grandmother of Aner Shapira. She's also a professor of philosophy from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And I'm Oria Mevarach. I'm the co-author of this book, One Day in October. I just read the 3 first paragraphs from Aner Shapira's story as was told by his mother, Shira. Yemima is Shira's mother. And we're here to talk a little bit about this book, but mostly about Aner and about heroism, and maybe a little bit about Aner's philosophy and Aner's music. The chapters that I just read to you are from one of the most outstanding characters in the Israeli society, Aner Shapira, which his heroic act in October 7th is unbelievable, and I'm gonna tell you about his act later. First of all, I would like to start telling you a little bit about this book and how it became. I think it became maybe the national book about October 7th, and also we're gonna speak a little bit about Aner's character, and then we'll also speak about his act of heroism. That I think for generations we will hear about this act. So, as I said, I'm the co-author of this book, but actually I wasn't supposed to write it. And after a week after October 7th, when we were all very, very depressed, I didn't lose anyone from my inner circle, so it was very different for me than what it was for thousands of families in Israel. But I was very, very depressed. And I remember the phone call I get from my manager, whose name is Rabbi Reuven Ziegler. I was in bed, a lot of tissues, crying, couldn't do anything, just sitting in bed and crying. And then he called me and he said, oh yeah, everyone in this publishing house, everyone in Koren was enlisted to the army. It's only me now because he's older, and the women. And now we also have to enlist to the army. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, we are a publishing house in Israel, and our job is to bring the Israeli society what they really, really need right now. And it was a week after October 7th when people were totally shattered. And he started thinking about healing and about hope. And he told me that that's what we have to give the Israeli society. And I think we should do it by bringing them a story that tells about the heroes of October 7th. When he told me about this idea, I told him, you know what, that's an amazing idea. I'm going to tell you three things. First of all, I don't want to be a part of this book because it's too hard for me. I was from those people who couldn't even look at the screen and not even listening to the heroic stories. This was too hard for me. So I don't want to be a part of it. I'm just going to manage it from above. Second of all, I think the one should be writing it is Yair Agmoni. And I told him, listen, this is an amazing, amazing idea. And I'm sorry that I can't take part of it. And then I offered it to Yair, and he didn't want to write it at the beginning because he was also depressed. But then he agreed. He gained a lot of resilience from this book. And after a month and maybe a month and a half, he offered me to join him and write also the stories and interview and do all the job. And then eventually I found myself also writing this story. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the idea behind this book, because we asked ourselves for many times, what made this book so lovable? In order to love someone, you need to get to know him. And in order to get to know him, you are going to be able to sit in front of a grieving parent who just lost his child and ask him the most personal questions, starting from how was he when he was a child, and give us some anecdotes about how he was when he was in high school, just like I read about Aner. And I realized that when you ask someone about a parent about their children, and even the hard stuff about them, what you get is unconditional love and compassion. And I think this book, that's what it does. It's not only about heroism, it's about people, about amazing people, and about love, and about their characters. So I started reading about Aner. First paragraphs that just tells us who he was. And later, when I'll read to you about his act of heroism, you will see, of course you, but everyone else that are watching us right now will see how this connects. Like his character from the beginning, from he was in elementary school, connects, brings him to this specific day, October 7th, when he saved people and paid his life in return. So now, Yamima, I would like to ask you if you would like to tell us a little bit about Aner. You also wanted to say something maybe about heroism, so now it's your turn.
Yeah. I should have congratulated you on the book, and I do that. But I must say that there is something about the stories, heroic stories, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Because the feeling that the book gives is that everything is so wonderful, light all over. People who sacrifice their lives, people who do these fantastic things. Yes, what Aner did is off scale, completely off scale, and I admire him for that. But I think we have to be very careful and not to turn our culture into a culture that celebrates death and heroism. It should be a culture that celebrates life, first of all. And when there is heroism, when there is death, we should think about the creativity that was lost, the life that was lost. And it's not all so wonderful after a week when we got up from this depression that we felt at the beginning. It's still not so wonderful. We're still there. The families that are mourning are still mourning. The war is still on. So for me, it's still very dark.
Sure.
And there is a passage from a very famous play by Bertolt Brecht. My younger daughter, not Aner's mother, my younger daughter Shlomit drew my attention to this passage. And in this passage, the play is Mother Courage and her children. And in this passage, there is a conversation between Mother Courage and the cook in the camp where they are. And they're talking about a certain general. And Mother Courage says, "He must be a very bad general." And the cook said, "Well, I know he's a glutton, but why is he bad?" Mother Courage says, "Because he needs courageous soldiers, that's why. If he had a good plan, he wouldn't need courageous soldiers. Ordinary ones would do him just fine. Wherever you find such shining virtues, you know things are really rotten." And the cook says, "I thought it meant there was something good." And Mother Courage says, "No, rotten. Think about it. If a general is stupid and leads his men into the shit, then they will need to show great bravery, which is a virtue. If he's a cheapskate and fails to recruit enough soldiers, then every man-jack of them will have to be like Hercules. If he is sloppy and can't be bothered, then they will have to have eyes in the back of their heads, else they're done for. Or he expects too much of them, and they will have to display exceptional loyalty. All of these are virtues which a proper country and a half-decent general wouldn't require. A well-run country doesn't need virtue. Everybody can be perfect ordinary, averagely intelligent, and cowards to boot."
So what you're saying is heroism is a symptom of a sick, state, or I wouldn't say society because it's a symptom of an amazing society inside a rotten even state or army or something was very, very badly managed. Every time we...
It's not a sign of a sick society because the people were wonderful.
The people,
but I think the people could have shown their merits in so many other situations. Like Aner's poetry is enough to make him exceptional. It's enough to make us admire him and to love him. The fact that these wonderful people had to show their merit, their wonderful characters, their being off scale, they had to show this in such tragic circumstances is something that we as a society have to be blamed for. So we as a society, the head of the army or the government, or it's not, we as a society have to think about this. Mm-hmm. We failed them and we lost them.
Maybe you can elaborate about Aner's character a little more, because now when you said it, it really gave me a shiver when you said it that, he did enough things in his very short life. He died at 22.
Right.
That I would never, I don't know, maybe I personally, Oria would never know if he wasn't if he weren't this hero that I wrote about. And those things that a lot of people, learned about Aner, and now I'm very glad that people from around the world will also learn about him. He did some things that are very heroic, even before he became such an icon of heroism. Yeah. And I'd like to hear about it a little more, even before we tell the crazy story of his act, because when I tell you, I'm telling the audience, when I'll read to you the act of Aner, you'll just be amazed. But I think also when you will tell us now about Aner, we can also be amazed even without it. Let's let him for a second, for a few minutes, be a hero without being that hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you can just tell us about him.
Yeah. So I think characteristically, Anel was looking for truth. He was really struggling to speak his mind in every situation, to have very sincere and deep conversations with the people around him, his mother Shira, his father Moshe, his brothers and sisters, we, our grandfather, my husband Hanina, and me, grandfather and grandmother, and certainly his friends. So many of them talk about conversations with Anel. At a certain point, he had a little shed in the house next to us, and they would gather there and they would talk to the morning or late hours of the night. He would have them hear his new creations, his new music. We'll talk about music later. Music was really the love of his life in terms of abstract things, not people. So music was number one in his life. And so he would sit there, he would play to them, he would read his text to them. And so it was about much of it was about being really very honest and very sincere. Another part of him was what Shira was referring to in the book, in the passages you cited, about injustice. Injustice was intolerable for him. In one of his poems, he really writes very ironically about people who protest against injustice, but they sit on some balcony in some beautiful house in the suburbs, and they talk about injustice. But in the park lot, there is a Ferrari. And in the whole neighborhood, there's not one family who speaks Amharic, which is the language of the Ethiopians. So, and hungry people. And 2 years before the war, he writes about children are murdered on my street. And people in Otef Aza, in the area around the Gaza Strip, they have to run into shelter when the sirens go, when bombs are thrown at them. So a lot of compassion and truth and fighting against injustice and being very, very gentle. You know, once we went on a hike, so before even there was a stone or a branch that disturbed me, Anel was already there and seeing to it that I won't stumble over it. It was amazing.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about Anel as a child? All I know about Anel, by the way, is from what Shira told us in the interview, and she gave us a lot of stories about Anel. We picked some and put them in the story. But when I read about Anel as a child, I realized that he was like his own, his own commander. This was a sentence that he kept repeating on. But was he a child of? Was he a hard child to raise? Was he a rebellion?
Well,
do you remember?
He's my first grandchild, and it was the first time that I was present at labor when he was born. Mm-hmm. And I just said, a new love is born, at the point that I didn't think that I'm going to fall in love. And here I fall in love with this baby. Like any proud grandmother, I thought that Anel was very special as my first grandchildren. I think that about other grandchildren too, that they're very special. But I think when Anel started learning music and playing the piano, that was a special moment because it seemed that he was really very talented. Mm-hmm. And maybe...
At what age did he start playing?
At the age of 6.
6. Wow.
And maybe we could listen to him playing at a later age when he was nearly 18, playing some music on the piano before he switched to hip hop and rap. And
Okay, so let's listen to it. amazing, really amazing. And you know, when you say that he switched from classical music to rap, right? Or to hip hop, but rap is almost even more extreme. It's almost the opposite from classical music. And I think it reflects on his personality, because when you read his story, you understand, you really, I think what I felt, and I also spoke about it with Yair. I spoke about Yair with Yair about Aner, and I told him it holds so many different opposites. Like, you know, he's from the, and also Shira says it, is like, he's such a great, you know, he has muscles and he's playing the piano. He's so anarchist, which we'll speak later about his anarchism also, but he's a great soldier. He's a great commander. And moving from classical music to rap is like it's like moving from a music that is really, you know, you're really subjected to many rules, and you're only performing something that someone, you know, wrote before you, and you're just the interpreter of the piece, into rap music, which he wrote by himself. And this is a very like it's a music of sometimes of rage and criticism about the society. And I think when we listen to Aner, I'm really glad that we just heard his classical music, because I think in Israel a lot of people know that he is into like criticism and rap and stuff like that. But also we must remember his side of classical, you know, not only music, but classical personality, right? Am I right about this?
Yeah, you're perfectly right, because there was this very gentle side in him.
Gentle.
And but I think the switch that we are talking about gave Aner the opportunity to express the more intellectual side that we were talking about, injustice, social concerns, empathy and compassion, and criticism also, of course, to combine these aspects of his personality with music, which classical music, as you said, does not give you the opportunity to do that, because it's very disciplined. I must say that even when he played classical music, sometimes he would add some
improvisation,
little twist of his own personality.
I'd like to hear that.
A retonuto that wasn't there all of a sudden and things. But your freedom is very limited in classical music, whereas here, you know, and somewhere he says, דגלים שחורים בים סוער של הנפש. So flags of danger in the turbulent sea of the soul. It was a stormy soul.
Wow.
And there were struggles within him. Talking to God, but who knows if he listens. There are struggles.
Wow.
And the new album that came out is called מחפש אהבה. So, looking for love. I may read you a few lines from that one. Looking for love among people, between me and her, between God and the world. Looking for love in songs, in stories, on streets. Looking for love in strange places, among mere strangers. We'll find comfort if we look for love.
Wow.
And in some other places you say, maybe if on Memorial Day we wouldn't tell all these horrible stories, but we'll tell some happier stories. Things could have been different.
Right.
So I don't think just telling stories would make that difference, but something in the general atmosphere.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You know, I want to ask you something a little personal, so you can, you know, actually not answer it if you want. But as a grandmother who lost her first grandson, what helps you deal with this grief? I mean, I'm especially asking about the public aspect. I mean, if people get to know Aner better, is it helping you? Like, does he give anything to you when people know about him? You
know, people are complex, and I see myself as a very simple person, but still there is complexity. So it doesn't take away the grief, but there is pride. Because people die of all kinds of other circumstances, right? People just get ill and die. People get killed in an accident. People get killed in war, but not while they were doing something as heroic. To me, it gives comfort that Anel died while he was defending people. There is nothing unwholesome in this kind of death. He was only defending people. He wasn't out to just to kill someone or to take revenge or to just sacrificing his life in order to save people whom he didn't even know. So yeah, to me, that's comfort. It comforts me, it consoles me that he didn't suffer, because he was standing there, was fighting there for over half an hour, which is a very long time. He knew already a few minutes before that it's not going to end well for him. But I think he was so absorbed in what he did, in doing, in really takes, physical competence and mental concentration and bravery. So I think he was all into that mission that he took upon himself. And then when he was wounded, he didn't suffer much. I think he died immediately. So that also. And yes, that people know about him and say, oh, I heard this album. I listened to it on YouTube. What kind of text, beautiful text. Or that people say, yeah, we don't know anyone else who managed to toss back 8 grenades.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's better than if it was forgotten.
Because I know as a reader that these stories, all the stories, but also an air story really, really gives me a lot. And it's important for me to know that also the family feels, maybe not any family, but you, that you feel that if many people know about Anel and I don't know, maybe learn something from him or take him inside their hearts, his spirit will be like more, could live a little bit more inside their heart. I feel like it's like I contain 43 heroes inside my heart, and they live through me some I don't know, somehow. And when you spoke,
Moshe say that it helps them to think about the people that he managed to save, because there were survivors in this shelter.
Right.
And some of them were kidnapped and some of them survived in the shelter. It helped them to think about the survivors.
Yeah. Does it help you to know that you spoke about happiness between like before, and we're going to get to the story in a minute, but he went to the party. I think he managed to dance. Before that, right?
Yeah.
He did have those last very happy hours of his life. Does it help you to think of it like that?
Yeah, I don't know about the last 2 hours that he was dancing. Somebody told us that he seemed very happy and he was really dancing. But I think on the whole he had a happy life. And of course, he knew that he was happy. He was very lovable. I mean, in high school, he was not the kind of Yeled Tov Yerushalayim, It was not the kind of
someone who just do whatever he was told.
Who comes prepared to every exam, and his notebooks are always with all the homework that he was supposed to do. Not at all. He went to school when he liked to go to school. He went into class. But on the other hand, he helped the woman who was in charge of the lab, and she needed some help, and he was over there to help her. So he was that kind. And so even the teachers who knew that he does not appreciate their classes so much, sometimes he comes, sometimes he doesn't come, they loved him. He was very, very lovable. And I think that he knew that.
Yeah.
He knew that. He knew that he's being loved, very dearly loved.
Right.
And that's a good feeling.
Wow.
It would be terrible to think that we missed something in our relationship. But he had a wonderful relationship with his family, parents and brothers and sisters, with us as grandparents, with friends. I think nobody really regrets anything.
Yeah, and
about
it also
him. So
had
that helps, because one of the worst things when something like this happens, that you blame yourself for something
Yeah.
that you didn't do, or he knew that we loved him.
Wow. I learned so much from what you're saying. Really, it's wow. So I think now we're gonna read this, the part of the story that tells the heroic act when he saved people. And I think after I read this, the audience, the people who watches us now, will understand why Aner Shapira had become one of the greatest icons of October 7th. I think he is one of the greatest, the most knowledgeable heroes. Even though we really had thousands of heroes, his act is really, it's extreme. It's not something I ever thought could happen. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background. He went to the Nova Festival. Was it at night or at night, right?
Yeah, he was at home
for
the meal. It was a holiday, Simchat Torah. He was at home for the meal. They had a wonderful, happy meal in their new renovated apartment. And then he went to the Nova. His parents knew that he's going to a party in the south. They didn't know more of that, more than that.
In the Nova Festival, they immediately felt also the booms, like they were bombing all around them. And only after some time, the shooting has started. So Aner finds a shelter, a public shelter outside of Re'im Kibbutz, Re'im. And he gets inside the shelter and he finds there about 25 people. And he's with Hirsch Goldberg-Polin and some other friends. They get inside the shelter and it's packed. Okay, the shelter is it's a really, really small place. It's like a bus station. And at that point, it's only sirens and they hear very strong booms. And people, like, they're very scared. And what people told the media afterwards, people who survived this, by the way, in Hebrew, it's called Migunit HaMavet. It's the shelter of death, because a lot of people died in that shelter. But also some people were saved because of Aner. And they say that immediately when he got inside the shelter, he says, everyone, hi, I think maybe he introduced himself so they know I'm a soldier, even though he wasn't with his weapon. He didn't come with his weapon. I'm a soldier. I spoke to the army. Everything's going to be okay. And some girl said that that really calmed her down. She felt secure when he was just giving. And then
they said, Aner, how good that you're here with us.
Right. Exactly. And
I must say that there is a recording. There's also a film, a video taken from a camera outside the shelter. And there's also a recording from the journalist who was inside the shelter. And she was killed, but the recording went on.
Oh, wow. Wow, she was killed. I didn't know that because it's mentioned in the story. Wow. So I'm going to read to you from the part when they are inside the shelter. Okay, so the incident at the shelter, there are whole videos of what happened there because some of the people filmed it. We have a clip from the beginning of the incident, and you can really see Aner. You can see it through his eyes, and you can see how he goes in there and starts processing the information right away. I can see that he's standing there, sort of taking it all in, surveying the area, looking around, getting a grasp of what's happening. And then he basically takes command. He takes charge of the situation. What he says to them there, this is what came out later from people who were there, is that a few seconds after he enters the shelter, he says to everyone, hi, I'm Aner Shapira, a soldier in the Nachal Commando unit. Don't worry, everything's going to be all right. I've spoken to the army, and they're nearby. Everything's going to be all right. And I think he really thought they were going to come, even though it took them even 6 or maybe even 7 hours later. And one of the girls there at the back of the shelter says, whoa, Aner, I'm so glad you came. You're making us feel so much calmer. And that's how it went on for a few minutes. Every time there's a boom and everybody crouches down, Aner calms them down. That goes on for some time. Then they started hearing shooting outside, terrorists' gunfire. Only then they realized that there's like terrorists that are around them. Aner hears the shooting getting closer and closer, and he realizes that the terrorists want to overrun the shelter. So he picks up a beer bottle and breaks it off the bottom and holds it by the neck. The shelter has this narrow passageway at the entrance with the main shelter space behind it. Everyone else is hiding inside, crouching over each other in that space. And Aner goes in front and positions himself by the entrance in the narrow opening. He stands there in the corner just behind the opening with a broken bottle in his hands, and he explains to everyone inside that he's going to attack any terrorist who tries to get in. He reassures them that as long as the terrorists can't get past the narrow passageway, they won't be able to hurt them. And he says to them, if I don't succeed, if I get hit, then someone else has to try to do the same thing. But then, instead of trying to break in, the terrorists start throwing grenades into the shelter. And I'm just gonna tell something a little, just to the audience. A grenade is something that is, it's one of the hardest things to protect yourself from, because once you pull the pin, it takes 4 or 4.5 seconds before it explodes. So it's like, let's do it. It's like, okay, it's like, boom, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. Okay, it's like 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay, so they take the pin, throw it inside, and now what Aner does is, it's really beyond nature, I think. We don't have it in the history of the Israeli, of the state of Israel. It's like the first time I ever heard of something like that.
People say the first time in the history of grenades.
Of grenades, yeah.
There's no other story like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not supposed to happen with grenades. So they're starting to throw grenades into the shelter, and Aner is by the entrance. So they throw a grenade, and he catches it before it explodes. And he throws the live grenade back outside. Okay, and then he has to do it so fast that it will be able to explode outside the shelter, okay? Then one of the kids who was hiding in the shelter panics and runs outside, and they shoot him to death. You can see it in the clip that's going around. The terrorists get closer to the shelter, and they stick their guns inside and start shooting, but they can't get in. They're clearly afraid of who is inside. Then they throw in a second grenade, and Aner throws that back outside too. A few minutes pass, and the terrorists throw a third grenade inside. They go right up to the shelter entrance and throw the grenade inside. Aner again throws it back outside. Each time the terrorists run to the side because they don't want to get hit by their own grenade. After that, they came back and throw a grenade for the fourth time, and Aner throws this one back at them too. They're not getting anywhere, and it's driving them crazy. So they shoot inside the shelter again. Another terrorist throws in a grenade. This is already the fifth, and Aner catches that too and throws it back outside. Again, grenade number 6, and again Aner throws that back. I mean, I'm reading it and it's just, but they don't give up. They shoot into the shelter again. At the same time, and now at the same time they throw a 7th grenade, but Aner throws that one back outside as well. And that grenade explodes right next to the terrorists. 7 grenades. Aner deflected 7 grenades. So the 8th grenade that they throw right at Aner, and they make sure to throw it just a second before it explodes. And that's it. That's how Aner gets killed. I'm going to read a little bit from the story. After the 8th grenade explodes, the shelter fills with smoke, and the terrorists go inside because there's no one to resist them anymore. They go inside and pull 4 people out. Then they go back inside and shoot everyone. They take those first 4 captives to Gaza. By this point, Aner's friend Hirsch Goldberg Polin had already lost his hand. The grenade blew his hand off. They kidnapped Hirsch like that, with his hand blown off. And they filmed the whole thing. Those monsters, they filmed it and posted it with no censoring and with no shame. But because Aner delayed them and tired them out, the terrorists ran away without confirming all the kills. They went in, sprayed bullets, and left. Because of that, besides the 4 taken captives to Gaza, another 8 people survived in that shelter. They were there for 5 or 6 hours, hiding under the bodies of those who were murdered, until the army came to rescue them. When they finally came to rescue them, at 2:30 in the afternoon, the first thing they said was, "There's this guy, Aner Shapira, who took charge here. It's thanks to him that we're still alive." I'm just going to mention Hirsch Goldberg Polin, Hashem Yikom Damo. Hirsch was taken captive, and he was murdered in a tunnel, along with 5 more hostages: Ori Danino, Eden Yerushalmi, Alex Lovnov, Almog Sarusi, and Carmel Gat. They suffered from starvation, and they were also suffering from. They were tortured, and this. I'm just gonna seize the opportunity to really pray for the coming back of all the hostages that are still there. So now when we met Aner's heroic act, I'd like us to speak a little bit about his anarchism, because when I spoke to Shira, his mother, your daughter, and she told me, I'm going to talk about Aner's anarchism, but I want to see the story before it's published. She said, if you're not going to deliver it in a complex way, that if it will be simplified, I don't want it to be there. Part of what he did was actually, I think, was based on his worldview of anarchism, because even metaphorically, if you think about this shelter, it's like a box, and he thinks outside the box. Because first of all, he does things that he shouldn't do. With grenades, no one throws grenades. Usually what you do is maybe you hide or you jump on the grenade. You do not throw grenades out. And throwing this 7 grenades out of the shelter is thinking outside the box. And I remember you told me, maybe you can tell us all about I don't know.
I will, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about it, yeah.
Yeah, so already in training, there was a point where they were trained to...
In the army.
In the army, yeah, he was in a very, one of the special units, and to handle grenades. And so the commander says, grenade, and everybody has to lie down. And Aner didn't lie down. He picked the grenade and tossed it back. And the commander said, "What are you doing? That's not what you're supposed to do." And Aner said, "That's what I'm going to do."
Wow.
And that goes back to what Shira said at the beginning, I'm my own commander.
Yeah. So he said it.
And he was quick enough and strong enough and to do it.
That's unbelievable. I didn't know this story, because if I knew it, I think it would be in this book.
Yeah.
That he actually threw a grenade when he was trained on grenades.
Yeah.
He said, "I know you have this whole protocol of how you have to deal with grenades, but I'm my own commander. I'm going to do things differently."
Yeah. I'm going to do things differently. And when the book was written, we weren't yet at that point where people came back, but people from the shelter, 2 people from the shelter. You mentioned Hirsch, who was murdered. 2 other people who were kidnapped from the shelter came back, Elia Cohen and Or Levy, and both of them met with Hirsch's parents and with Aner's parents.
Wow.
and told the story.
Wow.
So what we're telling here is not a myth. It's documented by the cameras. It's documented by the survivors. It's because it's very, very easy to, to construct stories and to build myth, but that's not a myth. That's really
it's
the
reality.
fact. And as to Hirsch was Aner's best friends, where there were a group of friends. Aner mentions him in one of his in the lyrics that he wrote. Also, the way he writes, ironically, Aner didn't drive, but he was the leader of the group nonetheless. But he says, each passing day brings a chance to experiment, or a chance for trial and error. What would the soul ask today? Everybody has already had his turn. Only I'm never tasked with being the driver. Well, he was a leader, as I said, but now he wasn't a driver. At the steering wheel, there's always Yaniv and Ro'i and Gili and Reish. This is a Reish.
Reish is Hirsch.
Reish is Hirsch, how they call it. So they even appear, and there is another song in the album where the words were written by Gili, by the one who is here referred to as Gili, and Aner composed the music. And so, yeah, they were a very close group of friends, and we were praying and hoping for Hirsch to come back.
Yeah.
And even in the previous album, there is a line where Sha'anan Street says, in the Sira, the pub where they were sitting, there are two chairs, one for Aner and one for Hirsch. And Shira was concerned maybe they shouldn't be put together because Hirsch is still alive.
But then, yeah, it was a nightmare when they were found in the tunnel. People went out to the street, just, I would never forget this day.
Yeah, I can say a few things about anarchism, but before, just to give you a taste of the variety of subjects that Aner was writing about. For example, sexual harassment.
Wow.
And there is one of them one poem that he thinks with his sisters, and where they say, they tell you not to take candy and then you learn how to say no, but who knows if it helps you. But he has one of them which really describes a rape in a way. And I'll just read you a few lines and see how he was really only 20 when he wrote this, or 21. And on the main street, she's just one other, and he's just one other. And 1,000 cars go by, only one green light. Pushed with her back against the bus stop, and there's only a voice screaming out of a frozen body, help. The murder didn't even appear in the paper.
Oh, wow.
So he was writing about all these bad things that happen in our society. But basically, and here I'm going back to anarchism, basically he believed that human nature is good. Right? There are those two extreme polar positions, and of course, synthesis between them, but human nature is bad, and we need a lot of discipline and rules and laws and punishment in order to have a civil society where there's less crime, where people can feel solidarity for one another. But on the other hand, there is a view that by our nature, we are good, we are kind, we are loving. We don't need so much discipline. If they would just leave us alone and let us grow in a natural way and have the friendly relationships that we can have and the loving relationships that we can have, then we won't need as much rules. And this ideology is very close to anarchism, because anarchism, when they take this basic belief in human nature, they think the less we have an interfering regime that controls everything that we do, the less we have that kind of regime, the better. So we have communities. Communities will do their own regulation and their own customs and their own rules, if you like. But we don't need a central regime with all the laws and rules and threats and punishments.
Mm-hmm.
So that was his direction. And he was expressing this idea in a non-technical way, but he was talking to Hanina, my husband, who is a philosopher of law. And Hanina said to him, you see, it's very close to what anarchists wanted to do, and he gave him a book, and so they were talking about it. So, yeah, not anarchism in the sense that, just anything goes. No, not that kind.
Yeah. Yeah, I when I hear you speak about Aner's anarchism, and also when I heard Shira speaks about it, I realized that Aner was a very, very unique combination between gvura, like heroism, and chesed, grace. Gvura and chesed are opposites. Like in the Kabbalah, they're different sfirot. They're opposite sfirot. They're not supposed to be mediated. But in Aner's character, you see that everything he does is he believes in chesed, he believes in grace, he believes in human good nature, and he acts from this. Even when you read this poem about the girl who gets raped, and I felt so much grace because she screams and he listens to it. And he gives her a voice. But in order to do that, you need to be very brave. You need to be able to, to write things like that, which are not so comfortable for people to hear. And also when he comes to what I'm going back to what we started with, when he's speaking to the policeman and he tells him, he didn't do anything to you. He's just black. That's what bothers you. This is a combination of gvura and chesed. And when he throws the grenades out of the shelter after he just calmed down a girl who died afterwards, it's a combination, and he saved lives. From that, I mean, this is something that I think Aner can teach us a secret.
Yeah, I want to say some more about his music, because music was really so important in his life, to the point where he says, אולי רק למוזיקה אני נותן להיכנס אליי באמת, which means maybe I only really allow music to get into me. Oh. Maybe I have no place for anyone else. Fear of wasting the little time between life and death makes me restless.
Wow.
So here's a boy of 20 or 21 when he wrote this, and he says, I don't want to waste any time. I have so little time between birth and death.
Wow.
He really had a sense that there is no time to waste. I can't say that he knew that he was going to die. I think many people who, face these dangerous situations in the army think about death, and that's why we hear about young people who wrote wills or wrote these sentences that later seem so like prophecies.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was under under the spell of death so much, but he didn't want to waste time. And he would tell his younger brothers and sisters, children in high school, they are with the screens all the time. They, why are you wasting your time? What legacy are you going to leave behind?
Wow.
So
this
boy at the age of 21 thinks of his legacy.
Yeah.
And what legacy left us.
Wow. Really, really. I mean, it inspires me to hear you speak about Aner.
The music and about listening. Yeah, there's one song that I really like very much. First of all, because he really sings there. It's not only rap, it's a combination of really sings and rap. It's called Jeruz, which was their way to, that's how they called Jerusalem. And he loved Jerusalem so much. And maybe we can listen to Jeruz.
Yeah.
He had an incredible voice. Wow.
When he finished this one, he said, "Savta, boi tishmei mashu." Grandma, come and hear something. And I was crying then, and I'm crying now,
Wow,
but
wow.
for different reasons.
Wow, wow. Wow. Yemima, I want to thank you so much for speaking to me, to us, about Aner and about those topics. I feel like I could speak to you about Aner, about heroism, about anarchism, and about grace, and about music for many more hours. Thank you so much. I would like you to maybe read us you mentioned the word will before. Maybe read us something. I think he did leave many wills, right? I mean,
Well, one will that was
Yeah.
very explicit. He said, "If I'm updating my will. If I die, have my album out."
really?
Yeah, and the album was with the order of the songs. Everybody was nearly complete.
Do you
we
remember-
needed someone now to go over it a little, but everything was
Wow.
nearly complete. But yeah, the one that. That has become, I think, quite well known, but speaks to me. I'll read it in Hebrew first because it sounds better in Hebrew. אני אדם שמאמין בשינוי. עזוב שינוי. מספיק להיות אדם שמאמין סתם. טוב, אז אני אדם מאמין. עזוב להאמין. מספיק שתהיה אדם. It's from this recent album, Looking for Love. So I'm a man who believes in change. Never mind change. It's enough to be a man who simply believes. Okay, I'm a man who simply believes. Never mind belief. It's enough to be a man. And I'm not as brave as Aner was, and I want to say, never mind to be a man, if only you could be.